Yes, yes, yes. We are back. It is the B side of episode 9 of the Cast Worthy podcast. I am Big Steve, aka Last of a Dying Breed, still here with EJ the Savage and the VP of Research. We wanted to split it up so that we did not spoil too much for everybody with the weekend that was with Game of Thrones and Endgame. So, before we get started, again, catch us on Instagram, catch us on Twitter at Castworthy. Just search Castworthy, or wherever you like to listen to your podcasts, whether it be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, soon to be iHeart, and hopefully as well will be on YouTube. Gentlemen, 3 hours, 10 years in the making, 22 movies, multiple characters, changes to make things fit. How do you guys feel that how do you guys feel the ending to this legacy that we just lived through went? I'm going to start with you, our resident Marvel guru, Savage.
Far too kind, far too kind. Russo brothers did an excellent job tying this all together. The continuity of all of the films is certainly really freaking difficult to do. A lot of cheese added in here and there, as you saw in Captain Marvel movies, in the Captain Marvel movie rather. But you know, I judge these comic movies in a certain way. I look at plot holes, I look at action, I look at just the overall epic superhero moment. And this movie, sad to say, was very long, very drawn out. It could have been cut in a lot of different ways, a lot of humor, right? And Marvel has a formula. They're most concerned about making money, filling seats, and at the end of the day, they may or may not give you a good product. Thankfully, the Russo brothers are diligent in tying things all together. I think this might have been the most cinematic acting drama action superhero movie we might have seen in a long time, especially from Marvel. You saw the ups and the downs of the characters, the sads, the highs and the lows. And of course, the plot was not the plot and how things would play out. A lot of fan theories came true. It was not anything shocking or surprising at all. The pace was slow, like I said before. But it had that epic moment. And that epic moment came at the end. It was wonderfully done. It was excellent. I liked it. The ending was well done. Brought a lot of tears to eyes in the theater. So ultimately, man, in the standards of judging Marvel movies and comic movies, I'm not mad at all. I rated it like a 8. The plot holes, man, is always a constant thing in Marvel. They just gloss over it, and that's the part that they just put it together because they know they're gonna get your ass in the seat anyway. You might not like it, but yeah, you'll deal with it. But overall, I think it's arguably one of the top 5 Marvel movies. I think it's a little unfair because all of the Avengers movies are a culmination of actors, so it makes it a lot easier to like them. But it is certainly the only Avengers film that I loved. The other ones I did not love as much for many reasons. But this one, I loved it. I'm finding more and more things that I'm annoyed with about it. But overall, man, it had that epic superhero climactic moment that made it great. So it was an epic movie. That I said that from the beginning, and I stick to that. Oh, and it was also it
Agreed.
was also for a Marvel movie. They pulled a lot of things from the comic, which was pretty good. I like that because Marvel has tended to not be so canon to the comics. They did a better job in this film. So yeah, I'm happy about that. Yep, and that's it.
I How did you not pee yourself? Like the 3 hours. How did you make it, EJ?
uh, man, I was prepared, man. Like That day I saw it Thursday at 6. So we went to this theater, real high end type theater, where you pay a lot, and it's a small theater setting, and hopefully you ain't gonna have a lot of Negroes or trailer park trash in there messing up your movie. So we went in there, and I had a long day, but I left work super early, to make it here, and we got there a little late, ordered the food, but man, I ain't eat nothing all day, ain't drink nothing all day, and I was in there. I just thugged out, and I went like, I was like, fuck the credits, fuck the previews. I went to the bathroom when I needed to then, and that was that.
True. So I know VP has this thing. I'm a Marine. I can hold my pee for 3 days. But for me, I had to strategically plan. So I'm like, damn, yo, how am I going to do this? How am I going to still make sure I enjoy? Usually I go to the movies, I grab a brew from the movies, or I grab a brew somewhere close by first, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't want to do that because I knew it was a 3-hour flick. So what I did was I brought a quarter pint of whiskey with me, some honey whiskey, and we bought a water, we bought a soda. I barely touched it. We had popcorn, of course. I had a swig of the water, not much, probably just enough to wash down the shots that I was taking of it. And I figured less liquid.
A better chance of
For
survival.
the beverage, yeah, then I'd be able to make it in. At the end of the 3 hours, I was right there. Like I didn't even sit through the credits because it was like, yo, if I don't go, it's not gonna be
Right.
good. VP, give me your take. I know you just saw it yesterday, so it's still pretty fresh in your mind. I think, or did you see it Saturday? Whatever, it doesn't matter. What'd you think of it?
I thought it was pretty good. It was a great movie, man. I know we said we're gonna try to avoid the spoilers, and I'm gonna try
Nope.
my
Nope.
hardest. And for everybody listening, if you do catch me in a spoiler and you're upset about it, feel free to email savage@castworthy.com. Um, but nah, I thought it was good, man. I really enjoyed it. Did it have some plot holes? Yes. The thing I think that got me the most is the beginning when they all when they all go and engage the guy, and then we know how that happens. I was like, what the hell's gonna happen in the rest of the 3 hours? And so I felt like that kind of drew me in more because I'm watching like what the hell is going what's gonna go on. But I thought it was well done, man. I really enjoyed that movie. Um One thing I wanted to ask EJ about, since
I
he
do my
is the
best.
the,
I
the
do my
resident
best.
comics guy, is I saw a video on YouTube where somebody said the reason they didn't do an end credit scene was because they did the end credit scene in the movie. Whereas I thought they wanted, since this is the culmination of 10 years of work, they wanted to let the
Mm-hmm.
original six kind of have their shine in the credits when they
Mm-hmm.
showed the pictures and signatures and stuff. And but the person said that during that scene where they're like talking and Black Widow is like, oh, there was a volcano or a earthquake in the ocean, and Okoye is like, yeah, it's just an earthquake, so whatever. Somebody was
Mm-hmm.
saying that that could be an Easter egg for, they said the person's name, but he's essentially
Namor,
Marvel's version of
Aquaman,
Aquaman.
Namor the Submariner. Yeah,
Yeah, so they were saying they could be setting that up, and then they also
definitely.
talked about the whole as Guardians of the Galaxy thing, where
Mm-hmm.
that's gonna set up Guardians 3, because they got to go against Adam somebody or something like that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so the post credit, I figured they didn't have a post credit scene because they really don't know what direction they're gonna go next. Because now you have to tie in the Fox movies and the rights that you have now, and they got to figure that out. And as I hypothesized before, they're pretty much gonna, and this is where it's gonna piss me off. I think they're pretty much gonna operate in a realm where, from 1995 to 2012, we have all of these secret mutant wars going on, which is very viable because, you know, in a lot of ways that has happened in the comics. But all of these secret mutant wars that are going on, and Fantastic Four out there somewhere, and all of the, you know, they might pull in the dark side of Marvel where you have the Blades and the Ghost Riders and all of that. So all of this is going to happen within that 95 to 2000 span, for some part, in my hypothesis. But going to the Easter egg, and you know, Al brought this up, and right before as I was typing it, I liked how they, you know, how Okoye basically brought that up and how they were investigating what was going on with the Sea Dwellers. And if you know Black Panther's history with Namor, Namor actually predates Aquaman. So, you know, DC and Marvel have the back and forth of copying characters. Namor was one of the oldest Marvel characters. He's one of the original Defenders. Him, Doctor Strange, and I can't think right now who the third one is off the top of my head. The original Defenders. And so he's an anti-hero. He's basically, and it all makes sense now because now it's been years and years and years. You guys on the surface are shitting on our ocean from all of these ships, all of the shit that's going on, all of this destruction, and it's your fault. So Namor is an arrogant, maniacal anti-hero to some degree who has a lot of superpowers, similar to Aquaman in a lot of ways, but he does more. And he, you know, he and Black Panther they've had an epic fight, an epic battle, to which at some point, you know, they realize they're both here for the same thing. But basically the Wakandans are the only ones that can pretty much save us versus the Atlanteans because they have the tech. So that was a good nod to that. And yeah, you
You just made me think about something too.
And before you get on that, I want to get to your point about the Asgardians of the Galaxy. It's clear that they're going to write Thor into this third one. It's going to be comical. It's going to be off the hook with comedy. And they didn't really show us what happened. Well, I'm not going to say too much, but we kind of can see what Quill is going to be doing in this third one. The only question I have is who's going to be their main villain, especially now that you're pulling in Thor. I mean, a lot of the Guardians villains are not that powerful on average for somebody like Thor to have any struggle with. And then the other reason why Namor is probably going to be Black Panther's main villain in Black Panther 2 is because they literally, unfortunately, kind of wiped out all of his biggest foes. Man-8, which is M'Baku. They've made him so good now when he was really a ravenous person who's been trying to kill T'Challa forever. Same thing with Killmonger. He's a psycho that's never stopped trying to kill him. You know, so he in Claw's dead. So Claw's one of the Throne's oldest foes since back when his father was alive. The only other way that they can go is if he has to battle one of the evil spirit men that's in Wakanda, but you can't really build a film totally off of that. So I kind of see it where it's going to be, you know, the throne has been rattled because T'Challa was gone. He's back trying to rebuild Wakanda, reestablish the throne. He might have to deal with a couple of people here and there. And then Namor is going to be one of the biggest issues that they're going to have to deal with. But yeah.
As far as the Namor thing, when you said the thing about y'all been dirty in the oceans and all this kind of stuff like that, it made me think about the line from Endgame when Captain America tells Black Widow he was walking by the Hudson and he saw a pod of whales and she was like in the he was like in the Hudson. He was like, yeah, well, you know, it's less ships, cleaner water because of everybody gone from the snap in Infinity War or whatever. And so that when you said that thing about the oceans, it made me think, based on how Endgame wraps up, things go to shit. And then now Namor's like, I gotta act. You know, you see what I'm saying? As far as Guardians of the Galaxy, the thing that the person was saying that I saw on YouTube was that, remember in Guardians 2 where when they was messing with those gold people. I don't know what they're called, but
Mhm.
they were getting those batteries for that guy she was gonna make called Adam something or whatever.
Mhm.
And so the person was saying that they think that Adam person will be the villain in Guardians 3. And because he's really powerful, that's why you need a Thor in there to kind of balance it out.
Yeah, it's totally viable. I know they're talking about bringing the Celestials more, into play. Yeah, and I mean that's been talked about for some time as far as Adam's concerned, because that was something that never really got tied up. Quill was able to kind of get away from it, and you know, yeah, they were able to kind of get away from it, because Quill didn't really have to deal with her, but she vows that she would have her revenge, and Adam is going to be the ultimate weapon and everything like that. Um, so Adam Warlock is who I believe they're talking
Yeah, that's
about.
his name, Adam
Yeah,
Warlock.
so it's gonna be kind of tough. I'm not too versed with that because, like I said, it's he, depending on how they're planning to do it, he is one of those characters that's been all around the universe, largely tied with X-Men and other people. So I think the reason why I don't know where they were originally going with it was because I think at the time when they did this, um, they I could be wrong, but I think he falls into an X-Men character type world. So I don't know that they would have had his rights to fully call him Adam Warlock, but you can kind of
Hmm.
allude to him by saying Adam. But if so, they'll have a pretty big fucking problem on their hands, which would make sense
Okay.
for Thor to be there. But again, I don't recall that he had a lot to do with him. I know Beta Ray Bill, which is another Thor like character who he looks like a goat or kind of horse. I don't know how to explain it, but like a man, and he has his own version of Mjolnir, and he has powers like Thor as well. Beta Ray Bill, I believe, had some dealings with Adam Warlock, but I don't remember too much about Thor doing that. But I mean, like I said, at this point, I think unfortunately, and I've said this before, I think at this phase, this movie kind of leaves Marvel in a scramble, because now they got to kind of piecemeal a lot of different things. They kind of got to close Guardians out because, like, I don't think it's going to be too much more after the third film. Black Panther is going to have an epic second film, and I think they're going to have a tough job doing that because I think visually and everything else, to see the Atlantean world and see Neymar's rise and all of that will be dope. But I don't know how much of a great story you're going to capture people with. So, and then you got Spider-Man, and I think they're going to rest a lot of the bank on Spider-Man. But the problem with that is we've seen so many Spider-Mans at this point. I don't know that for the older comic moviegoers or just people that want to see good films, I don't know how long that's gonna ride for them. The kids are always gonna love Spider-Man, but I don't know that they're really gonna be able to create this awesome product. So it's gonna be really interesting to see the route that they go the next 5 or 6 years. I kind of think they're on a decline now because this was the pinnacle of what they had.
I mean, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
As far as Spider-Man is concerned, I actually like the new Spider-Man better than the old ones. Like, you had Tobey Maguire, a guy who was like 70 playing a 16-year-old, and then the other guy they got, he was like 40 playing a 16-year-old. And now I think the kid they have now, he's like 21, 22, but
Mhm.
he actually seems like a kid. This is actually my favorite Spider-Man in the movies, the kid they got now.
Yeah, I think they're gonna now start to move into the stuff that they acquired from or in the Fox deal. I think we start to see the Fantastic Four. I think we start to see X-Men movies. We'll finally get a good Fantastic Four movie, I think, and then we'll start to see them incorporate X-Men and see what they're gonna do with the Wolverine story, the way that it left off with Logan. Um, but overall, from a movie standpoint, I think it's definitely the best movie that they've had or that we've had. Some people said they liked Infinity War better. The first Avengers is always going to be a classic, and that's going to be a lot of people's favorites. That's actually one of my favorite movies, as is. But I think this one, they did a great job, man. I, Robert Downey Jr. is a freaking uh he's a monster, dude. Like
Legend.
he came out
Oh man.
he came out at the beginning looking so sick and shit, and he got into that character, and then him dealing and having conversation with Captain America was great.
Mm-hmm.
So much emotion behind that. And then you start to see their softer side. After the 5 years goes by, you see a softer side. You see him, the family and all of that shit.
Mm-hmm.
And then they start popping and start looking at, everything. The actual plot starts to kick in. I think the comedy, whoever was writing the comedy for it, did a great job. The one-liners. I'm gonna have to assume Robert Downey Jr. played a part in that because he's that type of guy, and you can hear him saying some of the stuff that they were saying. I gotta say that I wish there was I mean, I know it was hard because of what they were doing. I wish there was another small fight scene maybe before the big battle. I
Mm-hmm.
love the way they started the big battle though with the three goons.
Mm-hmm.
And what was funny is as I'm sitting there, I'm watching and I'm like, yo, Captain America is fucking useless, yo. I'm like, this dude ain't shit, yo. And then boom. You know what I'm saying? So it was timely. They hit that right on the nose. And the traveling stuff that they did, I think they did a really, really fucking good job with it and sticking to it. When you had the cap on cap thing that took place where they kind of made people think it was, you're like, oh shit, he saw him, it's gonna fuck shit up. But then he calls in, oh, Loki's up here, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't in that sense screw it up.
But that was also a big flaw, though, when he went back again and then stayed there. And that was the question that I had. Like, how did he go back there, marry Agent Carter, and none of this shit had any effect on anything?
It didn't change nothing else, right?
It should have. It certainly should have.
I can explain that.
God.
Okay, so basically, in the rules that they set up in the movie itself for the way time travel works, when the professor saw the ancient one, she says if you change something, it creates an alternate timeline, right? So what happens is that they send Cap back to do his thing, right? And instead of coming right back the way he was supposed to, he stayed with Agent Carter. They live a whole life together, right? After she dies, he then uses his Pym particles to come back. In his original timeline, only 10 seconds have passed, but in his alternate timeline, he lived a full life with her.
Yeah, but the thing about it is, and Marvel does the Russo brothers do a good job of mocking themselves. And here's why. If you remember in the whole time traveling explanation part, they basically spent a good 20 minutes of shitting on how the Hulk's theory of time travel is unlike any other theory of time travel that's ever been seen in any time travel movie.
Yeah.
So that lets you know exactly. So
Future.
that lets you know right then and there. They're like, we're gonna fuck this up a little bit, because even if Cap stays back there, you got to ask yourself, Cap is now there through the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. He would not let Tony's father die. He would not let Bucky get taken. He's married to the director of Shield, knowing that all of these things are happening. The pure fact that Cap would just sit back and not let any of that happen, we know is bullshit. So for him,
Well, no, but that's the point though, EJ, is that it's saying that when he went back by staying with her, it created an alternative timeline. So in
right?
his alternative
But even
timeline, he could have addressed all of those things, but it has no impact
but then
on
again,
his original
it
timeline.
should have an impact, because then how does Bucky then become the Winter Soldier? Everything else stayed the same. That makes no sense. If Cap stays, knowing that Bucky is still alive, or let's just say him staying now creates an alternate wave of things. Okay, does Bucky ever get captured by the Soviets? Or how does Bucky then live? You know what I mean? That it makes no sense. You know what I'm
But
saying?
but you're making an assumption. It's like you said, and not an assumption, but we're assuming based on everything we know with Captain America that he like he wouldn't have that discipline. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
To just let it go. And I think knowing that he could ruin everyone else's lives, you know, while it seems selfish for him to allow all the stuff that did happen and all the negativity that took place that led up to it that we know of, allowing that to happen is, you know, not as bad as, all right, I got to step in here and possibly change, you know, the future completely. And who knows what true impact it can have, because, you know, it's never been done and nobody's ever really talked about it. It's just, hey, if you change it, it could fuck shit up. If you see, you know, your yourself, you could fuck shit up. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe he did have that, that discipline. I do want to say that they captured, from a, an emotional standpoint, they seem somehow to get the Spider-Man kid. That kid is he hits the mark every time. Like in Infinity War, like that was a crazy spot where you know you had to sit there and gather your testosterone real quick. I mean, like I'm crying over no damn comic book. And then when he, you know, when they got reunited in this one in Endgame, it was still a jerker. You know what I mean? Like you're like, oh shit, look at that, crick in my throat.
I
You know what I'm
sweat.
saying? Yeah, and then again, you know what I mean? Like after everything was said and done, he had his moment there at, you know, at the end, you know, before we got to the end. So yeah, he you know, they seem to capture it with the father son type aspect with them, and they're triggering and getting people there. There was a lot of tears in the theater that I was in. I heard some sniffles and shit like
Yeah,
that.
I heard straight weeping, sobbing.
yeah, same
I
here,
mean,
same here. But you know what, too, though, it's a credit to because I think the Russos
Mhm.
directed this thing, you know,
They did everything.
and sometimes you gotta just know when less is more, you know, and in that end scene, you know, some director based on, you know, Downey Jr.'s history in the franchise would have added something in there where he says something, you know, like some kind of slick remark that makes you laugh. And in this case, they chose to just have, you know, almost silence and
Mhm.
just play it on his face,
right.
you know, and that made the scene that much more powerful versus having, you know, some kind of snide remark or whatever, you know.
Well, they played it on Pepper. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So she basically
Yeah.
said the same thing he led the movie off with. You know what I mean? We're good
Hmm.
type shit. So, you know, they again playing on the emotions. Like if you're sitting there and, you know, for women or anyone that has a heart, you're sitting there, you're like, God damn. You
She's
know what I
losing her
mean?
husband.
You know that yeah, you know that they went through this last 5 years. You know, they have, you know, a seed and all of that, and this is the outcome. So Yeah, they did a good job there. The part that got me is when it first popped, and I don't know. You guys tell me if you had this thought. Um, Cap goes back, right? They count down to 9, or 5 seconds, whatever it was that he counted down, and then the bench scene, right? When I saw the bench scene initially, I couldn't see the whole silhouette. I couldn't see any gray hair or nothing. And I was thinking, oh shit, he went back and he changed stuff, and that's Tony sitting there on the bench. After at the first glimpse, because they went first glimpse and then they shot back to Bucky, and then they went back to him, and after they went back to him, you could tell that it was old because they got closer. But when I first saw it, I was like, oh shit, this thing. He went in there, grabbed the 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 glove.
The gauntlet.
I can't remember what it's called. The gauntlet.
The gauntlet.
Took the brunt of it, and now we got Tony sitting there. So, did you guys did that play in your head at all, or when you first saw it?
No, I was completely. I didn't know what to expect on that piece at all. The only thing that I knew for certain was that he was going to pass the mantle off. I just didn't know to who at what point, because to the comics, Bucky becomes Captain America in some form when Cap disappears the first time, and then Sam Wilson in the most recent comics has been Captain America for some time. So I just didn't know how they were going to play it, and it was kind of a dope nod for when Sam looked at him and Bucky was like, "You got it," you know what I mean? So I thought that was pretty dope. But I did not see Old Man Cap coming. But that is kind of a nod to the more recent comics where he is an old ass man and he's already went through the Hydra phase and all of that kind of stuff. So that was kind of slick how they tied that in, because that was a big ass controversy in the comics on how Cap, after all of these years, turned out to be Hydra's #1 agent and no one knew. And comic fans, especially myself, and I think somebody still has my fucking issue that I let them hold. But comic fans all around were just pissed off about, Cap being an agent of Hydra. And I thought that was a pretty dope and slick way that they did it in the time travel piece where he was like, "Hail Hydra." I thought that was pretty dope. But yeah, I did not see that coming on the bench at all.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Cap was a little bit he had some cheesy lines, man. That one at the beginning when he's like, "Let's go get this son of a bitch," I was like, I felt like it was weird. I felt embarrassed for him and shit. And then the Avengers reunite was pretty good though. That one was
Avengers Assemble.
Assemble rather. I think the scene that made the movie was when everybody starts popping up.
Mm-hmm.
When you start seeing the portals pop and you start to see motherfuckers step out and shit, man, that scene was
epic.
Yeah.
That's the superhero climactic epic point. And the dope part about it was, man, Cap really stole the show, because when everybody was down and out, this motherfucker decided, you know what? I'm a die trying. Like my shield is destroyed. Fuck it, let's do it. And I thought it was dope when Chadwick walked through the portal. That joint was super dope. How
man.
cool he was, and brought the whole Wakandan empire with him. That shit was dope. And quietly, Marvel quietly, man, I kind of love how they're not afraid to borrow. Like that whole scene, I know people didn't like the movie, but it was that whole scene, the whole idea behind it, seemingly, they watched Justice League. And one of the best parts of Justice League is when the Queen of the Amazons at the time is explaining the story of the Mother Box and basically how they had to fight Steppenwolf and everyone on the earth had to unite. It was literally the same thing, but it was played out because this was happening in this time of the movie. And I just thought that was dope how they were not afraid to borrow that concept and be like, you know what, all right, I see you, but I'm gonna one up you. So that was pretty dope.
Yeah, yeah. That scene, that intro was like really dope, and then they played the classic Avengers music or whatever, like they did in the first Avengers when they have that big hero shot when Hulk first arrives or whatever. So and then even after you get your hero moment when I forget what Doctor Strange says, and then Wong's like, "You need more? Like, it's like we got so many motherfuckers here. Like, we should be good."
Yeah.
But my my one, I guess, criticism of that scene. Well, I have more than one, but the one I'll talk about now is the Scarlet Witch. I just, I mean, why even have her there if you're gonna just downgrade her like that? It's infuriating, man.
Well, yeah, that's bad, but I think that was perfect. Like that line was perfect, where she's like, "You ruined my whole life," and he's like, "Bitch, I don't even know you."
Yeah,
Like he's like, "I have no clue who you are." Yo, Thanos is a bad motherfucker, yo.
Yeah.
Yo, it took all of them, and he still almost ended that shit again. Like I think it was sheer luck that Tony was in the right place at the right time, went in there, sleight of handed him, and made it happen because shit. Like for it to take all them people and he fought all, I mean, granted he had a big army and shit, but that he's a beast, man. Thanos is a beast.
you know what, Steve? You're right about that, and this is something I thought after Infinity War, and I definitely think it now after Endgame. And I know that this won't happen, but I kind of wish that they did in this case. I almost feel like Thanos needed to have an origin story movie so we can understand more of not just his motivations, but his skill set and his powers or whatever.
Agree.
Because we don't see that. Always in Infinity War, he shows up. He's this guy who has these iconic lines, and then he beats the shit out of the Hulk, and then everybody fears him. And in Guardians, when Ronan the Accuser says he's gonna go after Thanos, and that other guy is like, Thanos is the most powerful in the universe. And it's like, how? Like, all I've seen this motherfucker do is sit around and give orders. You know. Now we watch Endgame, and you're like, yo, Thanos is a beast. But if we had an origin story, we would kind of know like why it is he's able to go toe to toe with so many of these motherfuckers, instead of just seeing it happen and wondering how come this character is struggling with him, how come this character is struggling. If we had an origin story, it'd be like, oh, okay, I know why, because Thanos got this or he got that, and he's trained in this shit, he got these powers or whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
You
So
know,
no, go ahead, Steve.
I was gonna just say real quick. I think low key now that everybody has seen him and has so much respect for him after these last two, I think they can still do an origin for Thanos right now, and motherfuckers will be happy to see that shit.
Yeah, and I mean historically, Thanos, the Mad Titan, he's the last of the Titan alien race. And you see him versus the Avengers at one point. And then you see him against Iron Man in one of those books. Yeah, so I mean it's source material out there. I think they'll have to do a lot of fillers for it because a lot of those comics back then, I don't think, as you're talking the 60s, I don't think that they really focused on a lot of character development per se. I don't know, I never read them, but yeah, I think you guys are both on to something. Now that you got the Silver Surfer in play, I know that Thanos came across him at some point in the 80s. But the other problem is, I think the other problem is too for film that they have to kind of finesse this stuff because technically speaking, power wise, there were a couple of people on that battlefield, being Thor and Captain Marvel, that theoretically should be able to handle him. And then even in the comic,
Exactly.
He got the Silver Surfer, who is extremely powerful, you know, out there. So it's kind of like you kind of gotta add some balance to it, because it's like if we do it in the comic way, this shit is only gonna last 20 minutes. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, yeah, I appreciate the way that they kind of balance out how these things go down, and just everything that goes down. And it'll be interesting too, because Steve talked about the Fantastic Four. It'll be interesting to see how well they do that right, because when you introduce somebody like Galactus, when you do Doctor Doom right, um, Galactus specifically is, arguably one of the most powerful villains ever to grace a comic, and he's pretty crazy. So that would be interesting. I think Josh Brolin, we were talking earlier off mic, Josh Brolin, who does the voice of Thanos, man, really, really gave him a lot of personality, and it's gonna be hard to top, man. And he
Yeah.
personifies that character the same way Iron Man is the perfect Tony Stark. I mean, Robert Downey Jr. is the perfect Tony Stark. And I don't think anybody could top that. But it would be interesting to kind of see if they were to do an origin story of some kind, with the Mad Titan, and to see how he's went from planet to planet. So yeah, I think it's a possibility.
I think he captured it so well. He kind of, to me, reminded me of Bane in the Batman, in the Batman movies. Like
Hmm.
they were there, they were dark, they were quiet. I think
Yeah.
what they could do though, EJ, and you could correct me if I'm wrong based on the books and shit, but I think, and when we talk about fillers, you can do the origin, and because he's out there in the galaxy and shit, you could have him cross paths with Captain Marvel at some point. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
And
I was just gonna say that about Silver Surfer. Yep.
yeah, and then it could always end. They could have his origin ending where where he goes into Ragnarok. You know what I'm saying? So it just basically is a prequel to Ragnarok for the most part, leads into that, and then we already know what happens from there forward.
Yeah, pretty much just showing all of his travels and encounters. And yeah, I was just gonna say that now with the the rights to the Silver Surfer and all of that kind of stuff. It's plenty different ways that they can go. I mean, especially having the Fox characters and the rights, that opens up so much with the Kree, the Skrulls, the Shi'ar Empire, just a whole. It opens up the galaxy a lot more. It just truly opens up the galaxy a lot more,
Mm-hmm.
because this is the alien part of Marvel is where they really get deep and a lot of stuff. Like, I always felt that DC is much more deep with character development, connection, and villains, and all of that. Marvel gets really deep to me with the space travel and the different aliens and the planets. You have your different characters that have their own issues, but I think that real intricate stuff is where you go into space. And so, with Thanos, you got a whole lot of different things that have gone on with this dude, and it's definitely a possibility. Um, and the real question for them is just, where do they go from here? And I think, like I said before, this culmination of all these films, I don't think they really prepared for that shit. I really don't. But it'll be interesting.
Yeah. Um. So yeah, I think it was a great weekend for entertainment, and obviously there's going to be some going back and watching. I look forward to going back and watching both the episode of Game of Thrones as well as Endgame once again. I'll be doing that soon, and I know you guys will as well. Um,
Hmm.
and then obviously we'll be touching on some more Game of
Yep.
Thrones stuff as it falls. Um, Before we get out of here on the game, on not on Game of Thrones, but on the end game, um, anything that you guys want to add to that?
Gotta go ahead, Var.
Oh no, I was just one thing. I mean, in order to add anything, we would have to get into spoilers, and we said we're going to try not to do that for Endgame.
We kind of did already.
Yeah, I guess. But
I was gonna say that too.
you know, there are definitely some plot holes in there. But what I've always wondered is, and maybe EJ knows this since he's a comics guy, and this seems like a nitpick, but have they ever, in the comics at least, addressed how the people from Earth, like Tony or Black Widow or whatever, breathe when they go to these other planets? Like, that's something, like when I watch like stuff like this, that's something that always stands out to me or whatever. Like if you watch like Star Wars, these are people who travel to, you know, throughout the galaxy. So I just assume they have some kind of technology that lets them breathe wherever they at or whatever, you know. But in something like the MCU, these people have pretty much been on Earth forever and didn't really know aliens existed until like Thor showed up or whatever, you know? So
Yeah, I can't off the top of my head. Nothing greatly stands out for me. I mean, Tony, of course, being a genius has always been adaptable. But as far as space travel, man, I mean, like I said, the Fantastic Four is so important because they're Marvel's first family, and they did a lot of the space travel, obviously, because you know they got their powers in space. So they kind of became that family that was able to travel in space, because their powers came from something that happened in space. So they did a lot of the space travel stuff. Um, Off the top of my head, I don't recall them ever really addressing that, especially not in comics for other people. But then again, I don't really remember Iron Man having a lot of conflict on other planets. It was usually what was being brought to them, where it be the Avengers, you know, Thanos versus Avengers, and then the 68 issue. So I don't know that they really been off world, but so much that I can recall, but mainly the Fantastic Four for me, and the X-Men had some instances too, and I think that they did address it a little bit more as far as what they did in space, but you know, it's that fictional shit. Um, but
yeah.
going back to the battle scene, you said there were two things that bothered you. I don't remember if you covered that, but I know for the one part, um, my friend that I was at the movies with, was like, here we go with the whole women empowerment shit. Like the whole scene of all of the women just randomly popped up. That was kind of cheesy as fuck. Like everybody just happened to pop up in that one space to give one of the most powerful beings in the scene some help. She needed her motherfuckers help. Like, you know what I mean? That was kind of cheesy for me, but you know, that's the theme, the going theme these days. If people didn't realize it, that's the going theme. So we're gonna see a lot of that in Wonder Woman 2 and Birds of Prey and so on and so on.
Yo, we appreciate you riding with us. Just know every decision you ever made in life brought you to this podcast. We glad for the choices that you made. We glad you chose to stick around with us through part A and part B. We'll see you next time. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and follow on all social media platforms at Casworthy. And we'll see you next time. Peace.